Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon in this case. Thank you so much for listening here. This is Hunter, and I'm here with Colin. Colin, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing?
Dude, I'm really good, man. Got a nice buzz going. I mean, it's 12 o'clock, but...
Yeah, me too.
Do you? Nice.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, buddy.
By the way, what are you drinking, by the way?
Okay, so I went to the store earlier to get some fine beverages, but they were out of. So it's the morning time, right? So the socially acceptable thing to do is to drink champagne and orange juice, but they didn't have that, so I got Rainier, which is a Pacific Northwest staple of shitty cheap lager,
Classic.
and some orange flavored vitamin water, and I'm mixing that together like a homeless person.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, yours truly is currently drinking a, good God, how many, it never says how many, okay, so I've gone through almost 1.75 liters of vodka in about a week, just to put that in perspective for you guys.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, right? So
pretty solid,
Yeah, what can I say? I haven't had vodka I haven't bought any vodka in about it's probably been 7 or 8 months, because I've just been, buying those Mike's Hards. So when I got some vodka, I'm like, oh man, last Sunday I went through a very good amount. I probably went through a quarter of it last Sunday. I'm like, oh, football's back? Oh, I'm just going to sit in my chair, I'm just going to drink vodka all day, and that's what I did. But so yeah, I'm drinking some New Amsterdam here with a little Welch's berry pineapple passion fruit, which I highly recommend as a mixer. And yeah, I'm feeling lovely. But we're going to talk. Yeah, thanks, man. But we're going to talk about something a little more somber here. So we are talking about for the love of I almost said for the love of Scott. Scott, we miss you. Scott, we miss you.
I miss Scott. I wish he was here.
But we should do that movie for the love of Scott. But we're talking about for the love of Spock, which is of course the documentary by Adam Nimoy, directed by, and it's really just about of course Leonard Nimoy, who we lost last year, we pride ourselves on keeping it real here, and being real for our audience. And I gotta be honest, man.
R-E-E-L.
Yeah, R-E-E-L. But I gotta be honest, man. I don't cry a lot for celebrity deaths. I don't. It's like, you're a celebrity. Whatever. I bawled my eyes out when Leonard Nimoy died, and I'll get into why as we kind of get into our review. But so I don't think we've ever really talked about this. I mean, you grew up watching Star Trek, like the original, at least, right? Or
it was a little before my time, but my dad watched, that was his favorite show, so he watched all the original Star Trek. I think by the time I was old enough that I was actually watching it and I knew what was happening, it was already on to Enterprise. So I watched a lot of Jean-Luc Picard. I'm a big Jean-Luc Picard guy, but I appreciated the older. I'm a big fan of the older. I guess I just didn't watch it as much. But who doesn't know Spock? He's he transcended that show so much more. Even in Enterprise, I think they would make comments about him and refer back to him because he was just such an integral part of the original Star Trek. I mean, they had Vulcans in Enterprise, and but yeah, I was definitely pretty big Star Trek guy, just out of proxy from my dad.
So, I mean, for me, Star Trek was... So one of my memories, and I know I've talked about my dad on the podcast before, but one of my favorite memories is when Star Trek was back on NBC, and they would show it at 12, midnight, on Saturday nights after SNL, and where I would watch Phil Hartman, who was another hero of mine, and I would just sit up with my dad and eat Dole's pineapple chunks and watch 2 or 3 episodes of Star Trek and just be really amazed by it. I mean, now you see the special effects and everything, but, for 5, 6-year-old kids seeing the original Star Trek, that was mind-blowing at the time. It was like, oh my god, look at the ship, and, it's crazy to think that was, cutting edge at the time. But this movie, and I'm always a little worried when I go into a biopic, something like, for every Ray, there's something like I Saw the Light that just came out, which we haven't reviewed, but, it's just okay. I mean, so I was a little worried going into this movie. I'm like, oh, God, I really hope this is good, and totally spoiled my review. This will be in my top 10 favorite movies of this year. I thought this was brilliantly done. So, to really kind of just jump in here, obviously, it's kind of hard to give synopsis for a for a biopic, but really all this is this it really is just exploring the life of Leonard Nimoy. And for those of you who only know him as Spock, I mean, growing up even as a kid, he was never just Spock to me. I mean, he's always done. He's always been a lot more than that. I know. I love that Futurama episode that he's in. I still think it's one of the funniest things. I love when he's on the the Simpsons the monorail episode. I remember I thought that was so goddamn funny. Where he just shows up. He's like, you didn't do anything. He's like, didn't I? And he like beams up. I still think that's one of my favorite things I've seen in the TV show. Of course, he hosted The Outer Limits. I mean, Leonard Nimoy's done so much, and I think my favorite thing about this movie is that it showed that Leonard Nimoy is kind of a badass. By the way, if you see Fringe, he shows up on Fringe, and it's amazing how he does. But, yeah, Leonard Nimoy was just one of those guys, and I always kind of worry about the movie nerfing who they're talking about to make them seem, better than who they were, if that makes sense.
That's a good term. I like it, nerfing.
Yeah.
I got you. I'm on the same page.
Well, thank you. Adam Nimoy did a really good job of saying, like, hey, he was a good person, but, he went through his shit. And as a dad, he wasn't really around a lot. And that, having a dad who was a correctional officer, in that sense, I totally understood that. And the film did a good job of showing, like, hey, he was really always nice, but for his family at points he wasn't around. And it really, it never felt mean-spirited, it just felt very honest. And so watching this movie, it felt very therapeutic to watch it from the director's point of view, which is something else I appreciated. But yeah, I've been talking a lot, Colin. I'm sorry, go ahead, man. Like, what would you kind of think about this?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting at the start when Adam Nimoy is kind of going over like what this movie is about, why this movie is being made. And it was interesting that this movie started before Leonard Nimoy passed away. Like, Adam Nimoy's like, I'm so interested at the culture, like, pop icon phenomenon that was Spock to begin with. He's like, I want to make a movie about that. And then he explained, like, shortly after, he started, his father passed away, and he's like, well, this movie has to turn into more of, like, a biopic, like you said, for Leonard Nimoy specifically, as Spock. But it was so much more than just Spock. I mean, they went into, I didn't realize how much of a, like, accomplished actor he was before he ever got cast as Spock. Like, he was in so many different roles. They showed him, he's a cowboy. He played a Native American in some old, like, black and white movie or TV show. Yeah. Like, he had incredible range that you wouldn't realize if you just kind of knew him as Spock. You're like, I mean, he's amazing playing this half human, half Vulcan, which can't be easy to do, where you're, like, suppressing your emotions one half of the time and you're trying to be more logical all the time. And he does, I mean, he's amazing as Spock. Like, I think that's why people, loved him so much. I thought it was cool how the movie progresses, and you find out that like Spock, like women were all over Spock,
right?
Like in the 70s and 80s, like women were like Leonard Nimoy was like a sex symbol, and I was like, I didn't realize that. That's hilarious. Like that was awesome.
Right?
Like chicks dig Spock. I thought that was really cool.
Well, what I didn't know is that he's done a lot of voice work. He was Xehanort from Kingdom Hearts. I didn't fucking know that. I'm like, that's amazing. The fact that I knew he was Sentinel Prime from Transformers: Dark of the Moon, which is the one good thing about that piece of shit movie. But yeah, like the range that fucking Leonard Nimoy showed. I remember watching The Outer Limits as a kid. I think I was 8, 9 years old because, at the time I was like, I need, something to sub in for Twilight Zone, and The Outer Limits did a pretty damn good job of that. But yeah, I didn't know he was so classically trained. Like I knew he was classically trained, but not that classically trained. So this movie did a really good job. This biopic did a good job of showing like, hey, he wasn't just, he wasn't just Spock. He did a lot of different shit. And what I loved is that, man, Leonard Nimoy was a hustler. God, they talk about how he used to fix sell vacuum cleaners and install aquariums, like Spock installing really? Like, it really showed how...
And sorry to interrupt you, but
go ahead.
But he held out on that contract too for Star Wars the motion picture. Like he's a total hustler. Just to add to your point.
Yeah, and you said Star Wars. Ooh.
Star Trek. The motion picture.
No, it's okay. I understand. But man, Leonard Nimoy, man, and it's terrible. I actually talked to one of my coworkers who got to talk to Leonard Nimoy, and I was like, "You lucky son of a bitch!" And because he apparently came up here to came up to Lake Tahoe area multiple times, and how all I heard is that he was just the nicest guy. And you see archive footage of him, he just seems like a genuinely nice dude. Like, just seems very approachable. Like, he wouldn't be an asshole. Like, and I'll tell you right now, just personally, as a fan of this person, Bruce Willis, who I would love to meet, or used to want to meet, I was like, oh my god, John McClane, and all I've heard is that Bruce Willis is a dickhead, and that just breaks my heart. It makes me happy to know that Leonard Nimoy was, at least from all accounts, a good person. And then J.J. Abrams talking about how Leonard Nimoy, I think it was on the Star Trek reboot, the first one, how he like fell and broke his nose, and he was like, nope, let's just keep going. And J.J. Abrams is like, wait, what? I mean, that's how dedicated he was to his craft, and I like the fact how they very, very genuinely, organically kind of weave that into the fact that there were problems at home, how, he got divorced from his first wife, and how his relationship with the director Adam was estranged because he was always working. And one thing that I really appreciated that they pointed out psychologically was how, he talked about how he was going through problems with Leonard Nimoy, and how he goes outside and then he sees, all these pictures of Spock, and just for your psyche, that would fuck you up royally. Like, if you're mad at someone and you go outside in the world and you see pictures of that person all around you, that would fuck you up. And I appreciated that the movie actually addressed that. But yeah, I thought this was so well done. Colin, to kick it back to you, man. Kind of your thoughts, man.
Yes. The other thing I really liked about it, I mean, we're clearly on the same page. We both really enjoyed this movie. It's going to get really good grades from us. But I love that this is just like it's a huge tribute, like in the best way possible. Like, I think it's so awesome that this is his son. Like you were saying, like they had issues, growing up, which, teenagers and fathers, and it's a typical story. But the fact that, like, he kind of, like, ended up following his father's footsteps, he got away from law, which they say that Adam Nimoy became a lawyer, and
Yeah.
He was kind of drawn back to, making movies or just being in the film and, acting industry somewhere, just being close to it. And for him to be able to, like, make this tribute to his father, I thought it was really cool. And you could just see, like, the care that went into this movie, like, knowing it was from, his like, Leonard Nimoy's son. And, like, there's a great interview that, like, it starts with, like, Adam Nimoy interviewing Zachary Quinto, who's obviously the new Spock. And then all of a sudden it's kind of like Quinto's, like, interviewing... like, near the end, he's kind of interviewing Adam Nimoy, and it's just kind of like this conversation going back and forth, which I found really interesting, is kind of like Adam Nimoy, like, kind of talking to, like, the future of Spock. And it really became like Zachary Quinto being like, "Tell me more about your dad," like, type of thing. It was really well done. I have to say, like, I give big props to Adam Nimoy.
Yeah. So I mean, kind of in closing, and okay, sorry. So I will just say, kind of in closing, before we get to our final ratings here. Leonard Nimoy was one of those people I just grew up with. I've always just known about Leonard Nimoy, and like I said, the fanboy in me, I'm a bit of a nerd, in case you haven't listened to the podcast before. But Star Trek was one of those, the original, before I even got the Next Generation. That was just one of those things I connected to, and Leonard Nimoy has been a big part of memories with my dad. And even with Mama Hunter, I didn't watch as much of original with her, but we definitely had our conversations about it. And I love how they interviewed Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he brought up a really good point that making science cool, before there was Bill Nye, there was Spock, and how a lot of scientists and nerdy type things and scientific based shows or phenomenons really owe Star Trek and Spock, a great service, because he really humanized science in a way that really no one ever has, and it's very true, and I remember Beekman's World because of Spock. I mean, just to date myself a little bit, but this felt like a labor of love, and I mean that in the best way, not in in an ignorant way, but it really felt like Adam Nimoy was very honest with himself as far as his upbringing and with his father. But despite the man having, and I never knew he had an alcohol problem too, and the way that was even kind of injected into the film, I was like, wow, it was really powerful. And like I said, I love what Leonard Nimoy said. He said that he used to major in his career and minor in his family, and then in his later years, how he flipped that. And I found that just such a cool way to just kind of show how he evolved as a person. How have I not gone to a Star Trek convention? Fuck, I need to do that. But getting to my final thoughts, as I mentioned earlier, the one complaint I have about this movie is how Leonard Nimoy released the book called, I'm Not Spock, or I Am Not Spock, and how he kind of resented the character. I wish they would have dipped into that a little more, and why he resented the character so much. I would have liked a little more of that. But outside of that, though, I mean, that's a nitpick at best, and this is a fan-fucking-tastic for me. This will be, in my top 10, if not my top 5 favorite films this year. I thought this was so well done, and such an incredible labor of love by Adam Nimoy, and this was just incredibly well done. So, yeah, fan-fucking-tastic for me. Colin, no pressure. What would you give this?
Yeah, Adam Nimoy should really be commended for doing a really great job with this. I feel like this is a tough subject for anybody to kind of like make a grand debut for a big documentary like that. Yeah. And he really, I felt like he hit a home run. Like the amount of footage that is spliced into this is seems crazy to me. Like,
right?
They must have dug through like just hours and hours and hours of these TV spots, like all this footage that only could have been found, like, that are probably sitting in like reels in like movie studios or God knows where they had to go to get some of this footage. And they splice it together with all these interviews they did so well. You know, Leonard Nimoy is telling his own story a lot of the times in past interviews. It was like really, really impressive. It was a great documentary. And in a time where documentaries are honestly becoming like the market's being saturated with them. There's just a documentary about everything now. Yep. Like, this is one that stands out. It was really, really well done. And yeah, fan-fucking-tastic.
Dude, I'm happy. I'm happy to hear that, man. Because I went on the website for theloveofspock.com because this comes out on Blu-ray, and there's very few. I mean, with being able to buy everything on digital, it's like, why would I buy a Blu-ray of it when I can get it 3 weeks earlier? I'm probably gonna buy a Blu-ray of this because I would love to see the special features behind this and just see like extended interviews, which I'm sure they'll have and all that. But this was just. Yeah, this was heartbreaking, but this was uplifting in all the best ways. You know, I thought this was so well done. So, guys, if you haven't seen For the Love of Spock, seriously, pause this. Assuming you made it this far, pause this and go watch that and come back and listen to us because it's such a well done documentary. I was so happy to know that this. It exists, and that this was so well done. So, guys, you can follow us here on SoundCloud at The Real Pineapple 775. You can like us on Facebook at The Real Pineapple. You can follow Mr. Colin on Twitter at
The Real O'Neill.
And you can follow yours truly on Twitter at JHunterRealPineapple. We will have reviews up this week for The Lobster and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World and some other stuff for you guys as well. Thank you so much, guys. We will talk to you soon.